Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinatha Radha Gopinatha Shri Radha Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jam Vishnupad Param Sivarajagacharya Stottar Shatya Samangre Sabhacharya and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Jai BBT Founder Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jam Vishnupad Param Sivarajagacharya Stottar Shatya Samangre Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitya Guru Premanandi Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading Canto 3, Chapter 3, The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, Text 27. Hiranyam Rajatam Shayam Hiranyam Rajatam Shayam Vasamsya China Kambalan Vasamsya China Kambalan Yanam Ratani Pankanya Yanam Ratani Pankanya Taram Vritti Karim Api Taram Vritti Karim Api Hiranyam Rachatam Shayam Vasamsya China Kambalan Yanan Ratani Pankanya Taram Vritti Karim Api. Sorry, I forgot about Hiranyam Rajatam Shayam Vasamsya China Kambalan Yanam Ratani Pankanya Tadam vritti karim api Hiranyam rachitam shaya Vasamsya chinakam balam Yanam ratani pan kanya Tadam vritti karim api Hiranyam rachitam shaya Vasamsya chinakam balam Yanam ratani pan kanya Tadam vritti karim api Hiranyam rachitam shayam Vasamsya chinakam balam Yanam ratani pan kanya Tadam vritti karim api. So can someone back up the wrong verse? Please. Yeah, thank you. Otherwise they get confused online. Okay, word to word. Hiranyam, gold. Rachatam, gold coins. Shayam, bedding. Vasamsi, clothing. Ajina, animal skin for seats. Kambalan, blankets. Yanam, horses. Ratan, chariots. Ivan, elephants. Kanya, girls. Dharam, land. Vritti karim, to provide livelihood. Api, also. Translation of Prabhupada by Divine Grace of Bhajra in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Isvaresvar Prabhupada ki. Translation. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Purport. All these charities were meant for the Brahmanas, whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of society, both spiritually and materially. The Brahmanas were not giving their services as paid servants, but the society provided them with all necessities. It was arranged for some of the Brahmanas who were in difficulty for marriage to be given girls. The Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. The Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. When the Brahmana class or caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahmabandhus or disqualified Brahmanas, and thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society, and not in terms of birthright as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. Om Akyanati Mirandasya Krananchana Shalakaya Chaksharan Militam Vyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Andeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahaganarakunatam Vitam Tam Sachidvam Sadvetam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaganalalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sutidevi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpadarabhyascha Kripa Sindhyava Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming. So we're continuing the chapter The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, which is still Uddhava remembering Krishna's pastimes and relating them to Vidura as they met at the bank of the river Yamuna. And so in the recent verses we heard about the Lord's and his associate and the Yadu dynasty's disappearance of this planet, of their manifest pastimes. And we heard how they, that of course first of all that it's explained like Prabhupada interprets that of course there's no question of them having any material cause for this, but it's was all the Lord's will for different reasons that we discussed, and so he arranged the pastime to go like that, and so it went that he sent then to go away from Dwarka, because Dwarka is one of his eternal abodes, and so nothing inauspicious actually can happen there. So that's why he arranged that there was many bad omens, and so then to have the excuse that they said to go and perform pious activities there, and then Prabhas Kshetra, so to go there. And so we heard about how they went there and what they did, and before that we heard also how they got some time before cursed by the great sages because they made fun of them as sending Samba, one of the sons of Krishna, to pretend that he would be a pregnant woman and asking if it is a boy or a girl. And we also heard that this was, again, there's no question of anger for great sages as in terms of material conditioning as a result of mode of being associated with the mode of ignorance, but it was all the Lord's will for them also to manifest anger and to curse them in that way. And so now yesterday we heard how they came there to Prabhas, and where they started to do the duties, the pious activities, first taking bath and offering respect to the forefathers, demigods and great sages, and then they gave cows to the brahmanas in royal charity. And so in today's words is simply continuing on giving charity, that they not only give cows, but we hear a whole list of other items, namely also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin, seeds, blankets, horses, elephant skulls, and sufficient land for maintenance. And so Prabhupada takes the opportunity to purport to explain on this point that in a proper Vedic society with one ashrama dharma, that there is the brahmanas don't have to worry anything about for their material life, because they are given charity by the other castes, especially by the kshatriyas and the vaishyas, because shudras, they are simply meant to, as servants, to serve the other castes, and so they are not meant to actually have significant possessions, just enough to for their livelihood, but they should depend on others because they don't have the intelligence to properly use the money, so they would just get contaminated by having too much money. So that's why then it's up to the higher castes. The Vaishyas, obviously, we know they have money because they are mercantile men, agriculture and other trade. And Kshatriyas, of course, they are the administrators, so they need lots of wealth to perform their duty, exact taxes, and then to provide to the whole society, protect the whole society. And so it is those two castes who have possessed the money, but then actually, as I think particularly in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I remember in a Prabhupada explains that this a bit more elaborately of how that actually, if I remember correctly, I think it might be in Adi Lila, where in the pastime where one day Lord Chaitanya is visited by a Brahmana who is an astrologer, and so he asks him to tell him about his past life, and so the Brahmana tells him, and yeah, it's a sweet pastime. But I think it might be there that Prabhupada in the Prabhupada explains that. I'm not sure, but there he does explain that. No, I think that's a different point. That actually, back then the other people didn't have to worry about finding and paying for a doctor or for a teacher or astrologer, because those kind of services were done by the Brahmanas, and they didn't charge. They just went to other people's houses and did their service, and only getting a little prasadam provided in exchange. But of course, on top of that, as we hear in today's verse, that they got generally Brahmanas, that they get charity from the others. So, but yeah, so Prabhupada explains there in the purport that that the actual proprietors are the Brahmanas. It's not. It's actually just because Brahmanas are supposed to always be fully absorbed in their devotional service, or at least if they are not devotees in their religious practices, that performing yagyas and tapasya and everything, so that they wouldn't, they shouldn't bother about dealing with the money. So they simply get it provided as they need, and they are not supposed to keep it, to hoard it. As we know, Prabhupada said, a Brahmana, however much he might receive in a day, he should immediately spend it for Krishna service, and again depend on the Lord's mercy. That's of course an important point for devotees, that because wealth is one of the major tools of the illusory energy to give us this false security of independence, of that I can do whatever I like, I have so much money, I can just spend it as I like, I don't depend on anyone. But of course, as a devotee, we want the opposite. We always want to feel our full dependence on the mercy of the Lord. So that's one reason also why devotees and Brahmanas themselves are not supposed to directly have the wealth. But actually Prabhupada explains that they are the real proprietors. It's simply because they are too busy in their religious practices, that then it's so to say, it's given in the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas are like the caretakers, or like they hold the money, and whenever the Brahmanas need it, they get it from them. So and the other Varnas understand that, like in Vedic society, it's a God-conscious society, so all the Varnas understand their role and understand that, of course, ultimately that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, but in more practical terms, then it's like that actually then the Brahmanas are considered the proprietors in the society, and not only proprietors, as the leaders as well. The Kshatriyas, they're supposed to not only give charity to the Brahmanas, but to also follow their instructions and take their guidance for running the state. And like one nice point Prabhupada makes in the purport here is like, people know that Brahmanas, real Brahmanas, that they are, it's on a few levels, first I just read that sentence again. So when Prabhupada says here that, where is it? Here. The Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. The Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. So the other castes knew that it's for their best benefit to give to the Brahmanas on a few levels. And one is that they directly always think for the welfare of the others, like we discussed some time ago about in the past time with King Vena and all the sages, the Brahmanas, they're seeing how the society was suffering before, without a king, when King Anga left, renounced and being fed up with his son, and then again when King Vena was so cruel and also made the society suffer, so then they again contemplated how can we help, and they actually directly intervened by cursing, or not only cursing by the power of the mantras, by actually killing King Vena. And so that is one example of how they even directly might sometimes intervene in the rule dealings of the Kshatriyas if needed, because they always think for the elevation of society, as we hear here today as well. And of course, on a higher level, it is that, as we know, because they're devoted to serving Krishna, and knowing that Krishna is the root of everything, as we know the famous example, if you water the root, then the whole tree benefits. So it's in a God-conscious society, people know that, and so they know that it's not like, because otherwise from an external perspective it might seem, well, why should I give them charity? They just sit at home and do their puja or whatever. What do I get out of it? Nowadays people would think like that, but in a God-conscious society they know, I'm not on that level, I'm not qualified, so I for whatever reason I'm not able to serve the Lord as much directly, so if I give to them, assist in their service to the Lord, then I also benefit, because first of all, simply by serving Krishna, you serve everyone because he is the root of everything, and of course also because Krishna himself personally is especially pleased if someone respects and serves his devotees. And also with Maharaj Pritha there's a few nice points and examples that he makes in the 4th canto. And one example is when he instructs his citizens, one time when he makes, they are about to perform a big sacrifice, and which chapter is that? And on that occasion, Maharaj Prithu addresses all the citizens assembled there. And actually he begins, even just how he begins is very instructive as well. Because in the assembly there's not only the ordinary citizens, but there's great sages and great personalities. And so he begins very humbly, saying that I'm about to speak on trying to speak for the benefit of everyone, but also that he's not saying that I'm greatly learned, because he's a Shakti Avatar. Actually, he's not an ordinary soul. He's directly sent by the Lord for carrying out a specific purpose on his behalf, and in his case as the Palana Shakti, to perfectly rule, maintain the prajas, the citizens. And so, but he says that still that I'm simply putting forward and leave it like my speech, and I request you to evaluate and to either, I'll just look for the verse 1 second. So King Pritha said, "O gentle members of the assembly, may all good fortune be upon you. May all of you great souls who have come to attend this meeting kindly hear my prayer attentively. A person who is actually inquisitive must present his decision before an assembly of noble souls." So he must present his decision, and in other words, then he's depending on them to also either correct him if needed, or to give their blessings on what he said. And then he was talking about that, actually it's only by the grace of the Lord that I'm in this position. Don't think that I'm separately a great personality. And that he then explains how this relationship of between the king and the citizens, that the citizens get, of course, benefited if the king takes care of them nicely and gives them all facility for the material and spiritual life, but the king also gets benefited if they follow nicely. Then he gets 1/6 of their pious credits or their devotional credits. And whereas, of course, if he doesn't do it properly, his duty, then he gets 1/6 of the bad reactions. And so he appeals to them to please do your duties nicely and at the same time engage in devotional service. And in that way, because all the citizens, they were like so affectionate to Maharaj Prithu. He was, the perfect king. And in those times doesn't mean just doing his duty perfectly, but we know they had those kings, they exhibited so much affection and care for all the citizens. And so it was, an amazing relationship that nowadays it's inconceivable that like one leader can have with so many other people depending on him. And so in that way he appealed to them that also keep in mind it's not only for your benefit and for the pleasure of the Lord, but even if you think that just you might not think on those elevated terms, but even if you just feel affection for me, then keep in mind by doing your duty nicely, by doing devotional service, you also benefit me. So if you care about me, in other words, then please engage in devotional service. And then he also, I'll just continue that because it also connects with today's verse, that he winds up then about after he appealed to them to engage in devotional service, he also then explained further that because we know devotional service, what is the main factor which gives us the opportunity to engage in devotional service, and at the same time if we don't and do it properly, then we might lose it temporarily for very easily if we and that is the association of devotees. Or on the other hand, if you do Vaishnava Parat, then we might lose our opportunity to engage in devotional service. So that's why then he glorifies the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, explains about their importance. That because that's what was the point I wanted to make first. So he starts off by saying that as Kshatriyas, especially, sometimes they might be so powerful materially and have so much wealth, so much control of others, but Maharaj Prithu is saying that don't exhibit your material opulences before Brahmanas or Vaishnavas. In other words, again to the point, because you should understand that actually they are the real proprietors, they are the real leaders. So never think that you are independent of them, that you are more powerful than them. They are the real powerful caste in the society. So that's, I think, in text 34:20. So it's chapter 21 that I'm talking about now, in the 4th canto, where Maharaj Prithu instructs the citizens, and in text 37 he appeals about not to exhibit their material power. And and even actually before instructing the citizens, I'll go on. So to the chapter after that, 422, is then, so as when Maharaj Prithu concluded his instructions and thanked the citizens for doing their duty so nicely and thus benefiting him, then the citizens and all the people assembled there, they acknowledge and whatever he said and glorify him. And so while they are glorifying, then the 4 Kumaras appear in the sky. And actually that was already predicted before by Lord Vishnu when he had appeared at a sacrifice along with bringing Indra to be pardoned by Maharaj Prithu, because Indra had, when Prithu Maharaj was trying to perform the 100 horse sacrifice, Indra was afraid of losing his position, and so he disguised as a sannyasi and repeatedly stole the horse. And then at one point Lord Brahma came there and appealed to Prithu Maharaj that please just let go, because otherwise you induce Indra to even do more damage by introducing those false religious practices or pretenders. And so he did that, and then Lord Vishnu himself appeared along with King Indra, and of course beautiful prayers and conversations between the two of them. And at that point also Lord Vishnu already predicted that great sages would come to Maharaj Prithu, and that was at that time that they appeared there. And here again Prithu Maharaj exhibited how a Kshatriya is supposed to relate to Brahmanas, how respectfully, that he is never proud but always considers himself the servant. In fact, that's even at the coronation of Prithu Maharaj, when there was all demigods, even Lord Vishnu himself as Upendra came there, presented their gifts and worshipped him. Even at that time there was also professional reciters of prayers or of glorification, and so they actually glorified Prithu Maharaj and said all his main great deeds that he will do as well, also then later in his life. But one point they made there was also how they explained how he's relating to, I noted it somewhere, to everyone else, namely, just some of these. So that was in the 16th chapter, text 17, where they say that the king will respect all the women just like his own mother, will treat his wife like his other half of the body, will be like an affectionate father to the citizens, and he will treat himself as the most obedient servant of the devotees who always preach the glories of the Lord. So, and he perfectly exhibited that then here when the four Kumaras appeared. So first, of course, he paid his respects and washed their feet, sprinkled the water on his head, offered them nice seats and all of the those kind of things, and then he beautifully started to speak to them. By first explaining about how rare it is actually, first of all, to even see great personalities like them. So here in text 7 he starts to speak, where he explains, "My dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty." So, and again, keep in mind, Prithu Maharaj is not only a great devotee, but he's directly a Shaktavesha avatar. So, he didn't appear according to being forced by the law of karma to take on a material body like we do. So there's no question for him of pious activities or impious activities. He's eternally liberated soul who was sent here by the Lord to fulfill his desire. But again, we know great personality, yet yadacharati tadeva tarojana, right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever great men do, the common men follow. So they always, those great personalities know that, and so they always set the example by their actions. And he does that here, so beautifully as well, by presenting himself so humbly that it's so funny actually, like imagining that there's no question for him of pious or impious, but he thinks himself a fallen soul, and then that's somehow unknowingly, he might have had the luck to do some pious activities, that somehow the Lord graced him now by sending these great personalities. So I do not know what kind of pious activity I perform for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. And so then further he's glorifying the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, how fortunate someone is to receive them. And to make the point then stronger even is that he explains that one fortunate are those who. I'll just read the verse quickly. So, in text 10, he says, "A person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself is also glorified." So, yeah, he makes the point that ordinary souls like us, we fully depend on the mercy of the great souls. And so, even if we are not on our own strength, are not able to be very advanced or engage fully in devotional service, if we somehow get the opportunity to get mercy of great souls, then we are very fortunate. And then to make it even stronger, in text 11 he says, "On the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in, and where there is no water for washing their feet, is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live." So, no matter how beautiful and comfortable a house may be materially, Maharaj Prithu is saying it's nothing better than a tree, a hollow tree where venomous serpents live in, if you don't use that house to receive devotees very nicely. So, and then later when the chapter 20, that was in the chapter before, in chapter 21, there was another point, text 43. Yeah, and one Prabhupada very nicely talks also again on this relationship between Kshatriyas and Brahmanas, and puts it. It also goes nicely together with, in general, the point like we discussed it, like Srimad Prabhu recently also about how the Lord is most pleased by us serving His devotees, and maybe first let's say that in the purport, Prabhupada also explains here about that the Varnashrama Dharma that is created directly by the Lord. And so as described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society and not in terms of birthright as falsely claimed in present degraded society. So Prabhupada uses here the point about in contrast to the Brahma Bandhus, that we can easily understand that actually Krishna himself says according to which qualifications those castes are meant to be, and that he himself is creator. But so also I was thinking on, so that's one level also that why we are supposed to give charity to Brahmanas, and because that's part of Varnashrama Dharma, and this system itself, even though it is material, if it's just by itself, but it is created by Krishna, so it is still his desire for people in the material world to follow it. And of course on a higher level, as we discussed, Krishna is especially pleased if his devotees are served. So I'll just, in this purport, that's in 421:43, where, I'll read the verse itself also, it's very beautiful, where Maharaj Prithu is then appealing or praying to the assembly there. And so he's saying, "O respectable personalities present here, I beg the blessings of all of you that I may perpetually carry on my crown the dust of the lotus feet of such Brahmanas and Vaishnavas until the end of my life. He who can carry such dust on his head is very soon relieved of all the reactions which arise from sinful life, and eventually he develops all good and desirable qualities." And Prabhupada quotes then Prahlad Maharaj about how he explains that there's no question of approaching the Lord without carrying the dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas on one's head, and without that then there's no question of any good for society. So that's 7.5.32. And then Prabhupada, I'll read then the second part of the purport, where Prabhupada explains that a great soul who is fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord after understanding Him fully and after repeatedly undergoing austerities and penances for many, many lives is very rare. The crown of a king is simply a big load if the king or head of the state does not actually bear the dust of the lotus feet of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. We know that's Shukadeva Goswami is saying in second canto. And in other words, if a liberal king like Prithu Maharaj does not follow the instructions of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, or does not follow the Brahminical culture, he is simply a burden on the state, for he cannot benefit the citizens. Maharaj Prithu is the perfect example of an ideal chief executive. So that, Prabhupada makes the point that it's to carry the dust of the lotus feet of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas also then means to follow the instructions. And so if Kshatriyas don't do that, then the crown is just like a burden. As like Kamsari Prabhu some time ago, he gave a nice example for that of, I think, what's his name, Nahusha? Or this king who got qualified to take the post of Indra temporarily when Indra was cursed or something, I guess. But then he got so puffed up by being in the position that he offended no, not Bali Maharaj. But yeah, so he ended up being cursed to become this. Yeah, no, that's a different pastime. But yeah, so it's beautifully seen that if you just have the wealth, the position, but you don't have the proper attitude, that this position just, the point was that his getting this position then degraded his mentality. Before he was qualified, otherwise he wouldn't have been allowed to fill the post, but then he got puffed up by having this much power and opulence, and so then he got puffed up, and then he offended the great souls there and got cursed to become a lizard or some like low creature. So I think we're over time, so we'll conclude here that yes, it's on several levels, like Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, that yajna, tapa and dana, those three should never be given up. So on that level, it's the duty of the other caste to give charity, but also on a higher level, we know it's Krishna is pleased by serving his devotees, and so it's for householders. That's one main opportunity how to assist the other brahmanas in their devotional service by providing charity, but also more importantly, simply to follow the instructions and never offend devotees. Then we'll be blessed to engage in devotional service continuously. So, any comment or? Yes, Prabhu.
I'm just thinking about this concept. Often we hear devotees say, Yuga Dharma is the chanting of the holy names on Harinam, so therefore they neglect this aspect of giving charity to the brahmanas. So what's the correct mentality regarding the Yuga Dharma of the Harinam versus giving charity to the brahmanas?
I'm not very qualified to speak on that, but I think that for devotees, of course, it's a bit different, obviously, because you yourself are already devotee. so the Vaishnavas are higher than Brahmanas, but at the same time doesn't mean that we think ourselves great and we don't need to give charity. But it's Yuga Dharma is chanting of the holy name, and we know Srila Prabhupada's desire, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire is especially to spread that, to preach, and so that's the highest charity, the most important charity that we can give in this stage, particularly. But so personally, for a grihastha, I guess it depends. It doesn't mean that you should neglect your chanting and to work more and earn more money to give charity. But it's according to our material position, whatever we can give. But chanting is more important, and like spreading, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books and Harinam and all of that. So, I guess it's more in the mentality that we should have, that yes, in like everyone, and should be aware, of course, that we are not the real proprietor of anything. That Krishna is the proprietor, and in practical terms, yes, if you live outside the temple, then I guess it's good to also think that yes, like I'm just my house. It's simply also given by Gopinath that I can engage in that way here. But yeah, it's also Gopinath's property. It belongs in one sense to the temple as well, and so whatever I have, it's Gopinath's. It's the temple's. But it's just my duty to use it properly for my devotional service and as much as I can to help others as well. So, yeah. Okay. Kantarachima Bhaktam Ki Jai. Prabhupada Ki Jai.